Landlords grow rich in their sleep without working, risking, or economizing. John Stuart Mill, political economist. That quote relates well to the motivation of today's guest, Chad Castell, stock day trader and landlord. Husband, father, entrepreneur, realtor, a long list of other titles and descriptions, and landlord. Welcome to the And Landlord podcast with me, Jonathan Taylor Smith, also known as JT, following a roadmap to financial freedom through residential rental real estate. Welcome to the And Landlord podcast, and Lord podcast. Welcome to episode number 20 and my second interview. Chad Castell is my guest today. He is a stock day trader and landlord. He's also a realtor in Hollywood, Florida, in addition to his more important titles of husband and father. I had the pleasure of meeting Chad earlier in the year at a multifamily real estate investing event in Denver, Colorado, and we've maintained pretty much weekly contact since then to see where we might be able to do business together. I highly recommend attending networking events, whether they be local or you have to travel, where you can come into contact with like-minded individuals who may be doing greater things than you or maybe just doing different things than you, either way, from which you can learn. Not only will you meet colleagues, but potential business partners and maybe your next private lender, but you can also come across someone who will be a mentor to you, or it might be the start of a mastermind, or just an accountability partner. Meeting people and making connections at networking events can be very valuable to your growth, both business and personal, which is why I was especially intrigued to have met Chad, a stock day trader who later got into real estate investing and became a landlord, because I was considering getting into stock day trading before becoming a real estate investor, literally within weeks of each other. So let's get into the show and hear what Chad has to say about stock day trading and real estate investing and being a landlord and a realtor, all of it. And please excuse some of the audio quality issues. I will improve that going forward. So my guest today on the And Landlord podcast is Chad Castell, an individual that I met at a real estate investing summit in Denver, Colorado. Great guy, has amazing information about what he's done in real estate investing. And most interesting to me, he's a stock day trader, something that I wanted to get in. So Chad, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hey, JT, thanks for having me on.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and what you got going on.
So my background is in day trading, like you said. I've been doing that for 8 years. The way I got into that was through a collectible trading card game called Magic the Gathering, which skill sets directly correlated to me getting into day trading. And in November, I got into real estate investing as a part-time, I'm going to call it a hobby, but way more into it than a hobby, and hopefully moving into that full-time in the next couple of years.
So tell me, how did Magic the Gathering, I've heard of that game. My son plays it. I haven't. So how does that lead into day trading?
So Magic is a game of skill and chance and limited information. So, you develop strategies to beat your opponents. Sometimes you develop the correct strategy and you lose. And sometimes you develop an incorrect strategy and you win. And you have to be able to tell the difference between both of those and not be results oriented with those strategies. And those skill sets directly correlating to trading, because sometimes I've had trades in the past that I've won and they've been the wrong trades. They've been the wrong reasons to do them. And you have to correctly analyze that. So, you don't make a mistake again. Like, even though I won in that particular trade, it's a long-term losing trade. And vice versa. Sometimes you lose in a trade, but it's a long-term winning trade and you have to just keep doing it. That's how I was able to sell myself onto getting into trading.
And so, how does the day trading work? You're not holding on to these stocks past one day, literally, correct?
Me, most of my trades are, minutes, seconds. It depends how volatile they are, but yeah, I rarely keep positions overnight.
Can you tell me how that works out as far as your best and worst days, or no?
Can't really go into that. What I can tell you is that I've made a nice living out of it. I've had, besides getting help getting into it, I haven't had any financial assistance, and I've been able to provide for my family and buy a house and get into real estate and buy
Okay.
a property in cash. So it's been okay for me.
More good days than bad, certainly.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, I was considering becoming a day trader before I got into real estate investing. Would you say that there are any special knowledge or skills, or should you have a certain aptitude to be a day trader?
Well, the numbers don't lie. So you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be able to critically think things through. You have to be able to evolve because, the strategies that you might use, at least in the way that I trade 2 years ago, aren't particularly applicable now or don't come up as often. You have to be okay with, generally speaking, being alone. So if you're an extrovert, like I'm an extrovert, so that's kind of draining on me being alone all day. And those skill sets, being honest with yourself, critical thinking, they're not something that everybody can have, which is okay. But if you're going to get involved into a game where you could lose money, you don't want to do that if you don't have those skill sets.
Okay. So, how did you add rental real estate investing to being a stock day trader?
Well, I was just over the course of the last 4 or 5 years looking at, multiple revenue streams. And I knew I had an active revenue stream in day trading, even though it's not, I don't know what I'm going to make every month. It's been very consistent. And I was looking for a passive revenue stream. So in November, I finally just hopped into Google and typed how to invest in real estate and found Bigger Pockets and started absorbing as many podcasts and articles and webinars and everything I could do. Once I figured out the basic formula to purchase a rental property, I just started to look in Florida and didn't find any cash flowing deals here and ended up finding a cash flowing deal in upstate New York.
Okay. Well, I want to know more about that. But is your long term goal to move completely into rental real estate investing, or will you continue to do stock day trading or do both?
So my long-term goal is to slowly move out of trading. It's a 5-day-a-week job for the most part. Maybe a few years from now, I'm doing it 2 to 3 days a week, and 5 years from now, I'm doing it 0. So to answer your question, yes, my long-term goal is to get out of stock trading.
So you said that your rental properties are in New York?
Yeah, I have one full-time rental property in upstate New York.
Okay, well, tell me about that. Why New York, and how's that going for you?
Just kind of right place at the right time. I had a former business partner who recommended that area because he owns rental properties in the area. I just started researching it, finding that the cash on cash returns were excellent, and just started making wholesale type offers on the properties and waited till I got the right deal. The property I ended up buying, they were asking for 90,000. I offered 73.5 in cash and 83.5 with a mortgage. We ended up meeting at 78.8 in cash. I ended up putting 10 into it, and now it's renting. It's fully rented for $2,300.
How many bedrooms?
So it's a two-structure property. The first structure is a 4-bedroom house, and the second structure is a commercial unit occupied by a dog grooming place.
Oh, so mixed use, commercial and residential.
Mixed use, yeah.
And that was your first deal. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how has that gone? Have there been any hiccups, headaches, hassles, or is it the best thing that's ever happened to you?
So both, a $2,300 rental unit on a, let's just call it, I'm in for $90,000 place is a great return on your investment. The reason it's not unbelievable at the moment is I'm having trouble cashing out. My plan was to buy it in cash and then cash out refi, but my amateur or noviceness, where I did not know that banks would not cash out commercial properties. They just don't want to deal with mixed use properties. So I've been having trouble getting anybody to, refi me out. If they are willing to, they don't want to do anything less than 100,000, or they don't do upstate New York. So that was a mistake that had I known, I might not have done.
Okay, so the aspect of it being a mixed-use property, that commercial element prevents you from going to a regular lender and getting a 30-year fix.
Yeah, or even just, I've spoken to a lot of different lenders. Just it just one of those categories. It's either not expensive enough, or they don't want to do New York, or they don't want to do mixed use. So I've been having trouble getting a decent rate. I've had family that's willing to do it, but I kind of just wanted to do this first one on my own. So worst case scenario, I'll have a family member cash out refi, and they'll give me the 70,000 or whatever the 70% of LTV is.
Is there something specific about New York that makes them not want to lend on it?
The lenders?
Yeah, what's their concern about New York?
I'm not sure. Just a bunch of lenders I've called have said, oh, we do every state but New York and Alaska or something. And New York just seems to be on the states that the lenders, some lenders just said, oh, we don't do New York. So the conversation never went any further.
Well, see, a lot of people getting into real estate investing for the first time, their fear is the unknown, and they let that stop them from getting started. So the fact that you got started is great. Other than having your cash locked in the property, have there been any other unforeseen occurrences or things that you wish you had known going in?
Well, not the latter to your question, but the former is, I tried to work with a recommended construction guy. Again, there's a construction company, and I was going to hire him to do the construction work, and I was going to hire him to oversee the property and give him some equity in the property to do so, figuring if he owned some of the property, he would take care of it like its own. But it didn't work out particularly well, and he didn't do his job, so I ended up having to let him go. I was lied to, but some of it was my fault. I could have done a better job to oversee him.
All right.
And yeah, the old adage, trust but verify.
Certainly.
I trusted, but only like 3/4 verified. So I could have lost less money than I did. But you have to take responsibility when you mess up. That it was my fault, and I lost out into it, so I got punished.
Do you think it would have been different if you were local, or the distance between New York and Florida play into it?
Maybe. Maybe I would have driven over there. I think it more I just was a little too trusting and lazy, or I'm going to call it incompetent in some spots. But yeah, maybe it would have worked out, so it wouldn't have happened. But I really just have to take the blame that I just needed to keep a little bit more of an eye on them.
Mistakes are some of the best learning experiences. And if you're taking that on yourself and saying that you're to blame, you'll certainly be better for it going forward. How are you going to move forward? What are you doing in real estate investing now? Is it still going to be New York, or are you looking at other property types and other locations?
Yeah, so I will consider expanding on New York. I wanted to get that particular place rented, see how it did for 4 months, make sure that it was what I thought it was, and so we're on the way to that. I had hired a new property manager who I'm happy with, but not ecstatic about. He's doing a pretty good job. I can get in touch with him, which I care about. Moving forward, I've started to flip properties in South Florida. Mostly my wife. I met a flipper down here who wanted to expand his market. He wanted to teach me. I didn't have any time, but my wife was interested, so we taught her. And we've already wholesaled a deal and are midway through a rehab down here.
So you're a husband and wife team in real estate investing.
Yeah, I would say it's more like I bridged the gap from the flipper, whose name is Brandon, that we're working with, to her. I'm not really that involved. I learned how to do it just because I wanted to be able to comp properties and learn that skill set. But she's really doing most of the looking and finding for the properties.
So with regard to things like comping properties, do you have your real estate license in Florida?
I do.
So do you perform as a realtor in addition to real estate investor and stock day trader, or did you just get it to be a better investor?
Well, I got it to be a better investor. And then I had somebody ask me to sell their house. It was the right opportunity. And we just went under contract for my first house sale.
So is that something you're going to pursue going forward?
If it's the right opportunity, I'm not going to take someone's house. If I'm going to take your listing, it's, you're going to get 100% of me. So I'm not going to take the listing if I don't feel that A, it's worth it for me, B, I won't do a good enough job, or, C, if I think you're going to be a problem to work with. I want people that are easy to work with, that understand that I understand the markets and what prices things should be sold or bought for. And if someone's going to tell me how to do my job, then they should get another realtor. That's how I look at it.
Certainly. Well, that's often one of the questions that those investing in real estate have is, should they get their license? And there are some pros and cons to it. Do you think it has been a betterment, or has it hampered you in any way being licensed?
It's hampered me in no way. If I just sell a property and do nothing else with it every 3 years, I mean, that's just adding money into your revenue stream that wouldn't have otherwise been there. And I'm very, very big on having as many revenue streams as you possibly can.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And then with regard to the property manager on your other property, have you ever considered self-managing?
I've considered it. I don't think the money that I'll save with one property is worth it to me at this time. The investment, speaking with you and a couple other people who own multiple homes, the systems in place are phenomenal, and the time invested to get those systems in place probably isn't there for me right now. But once I stack up the properties and have 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 properties, then yeah, of course, I'll very strongly consider self-managing.
So as I mentioned, you and I met at Joe Fairless event, the best ever real estate investing advice conference in Denver, Colorado. What brought you to that event, and what did you take away from it?
So there was a couple meetings down here, and I went to one, and I met a really nice lady named Rita Medeiros. She is 20-something single family homes in Ohio, and she just recommended some meetings, and she recommended some conferences, and the meetings I went to worked out very well, and she recommended Joe's conference. So I said, all right, let me just fly there. The best conference I've been to so far. I got a lot out of it. I learned a lot. It gave me some ideas and seed thoughts that I've expanded upon since going. I met you there. I met a bunch of other people there. It was a very positive experience. It taught me about partnering. And it also, the one negative thing I will say about the conference is that I thought that people were a little deceptive with how they pitched me. So they would say things like, oh, I have 500 doors under my belt. And when I actually delved into it, they owned 4 properties outright, and they owned, 5% of the other 496.
Yeah.
And which is totally fine. But, they made it seem like they owned 500 doors outright themselves or with a partner or something.
Yeah, they don't tell you that their percentage, they're a limited partner and they've got a very small percentage in the deal.
And I didn't know if it was a sales pitchy or it was an ego thing, but I'm not a fan of that. I think owning a piece of 500 doors is already enough of a line in your resume, because it shows me you've made connections and made the right investment types, and you're expanding your hedging instead of owning one single family home. It's a great thing, but that's just something I wasn't a fan of, and something I keep a lookout for more now.
Yeah, I encountered some individuals speaking along those same lines, and it sounds like I thought it was more of an ego play, but yeah, it could have been a sales pitch as well. Now, you've been on Joe Fairless's show. Do you recall what episode that was?
You know what? I don't recall. It was in early May.
I'll put it in the show notes in case people want to see what you had to say on that show. You mentioned that when you were at the event, you gained some knowledge about partnerships. And that's something that I've been struggling with, how best to partner with individuals, how to build a team. With regard to your flipping business or flipping activity in Florida, are you starting that process of building a team so that can become an ongoing business for you and your wife?
Yes. So the team is small, where we have our other flipper that taught us. We're both realtors, my wife. And now we're beginning to teach people from other areas in northern Florida and central Florida, things that are just a little bit out of our grasp, developing a relationship with contractors there. The most important thing is just to find the properties. If we find the deals, well, everything else will fall into place. So it's teaching people that we'll sit there and look at on the MLS and at wholesalers list, and we'll spend a few hours a day grinding through the properties to find one, to find a gem in the rough. And so I'm teaching somebody who lives in Wellington, which is about an hour and a half north of me. And I'm looking to maybe get someone in the Jacksonville area. It's slow and steady. You know how it is.
Yeah, I'm hearing lots of things about Jacksonville. So that's one of the areas that I've considered expanding into. And I'm originally from Florida myself. So your future goals for real estate investing, I know that you want to build a portfolio of rental properties. You've mentioned that you've done some wholesaling and that you're working with your wife to accomplish some flips. My purpose for going to Joe's event in Denver was to learn more about getting into larger multifamily properties. What do you think your focus is going to be going forward?
We both kind of had that same goal, but I'm having trouble competing and finding decent deals in the larger multifamilies.
Me too.
So that's always in play. Like, I'd rather scale up with multifamilies, but I'm not going to force a round peg into a square hole. If I can go out and find a single family home that can cash on cash return for 30%, I'm not going to not do it because I want to get into multifamily. So my goal is to have passive income on my own, have some single family homes, have some active income with flipping, wholesaling, and then maybe long-term do some syndication with apartments. But the syndication, I can't force it. It has to be I'm not going to take people's money and go and get a subprime deal or a deal that's not super great. It's like, I'll wait until the market shifts and then I'll get into that.
And so speaking of that, do you think that there will be a change in the market, a downturn in the economy, something of that nature coming along soon?
I mean, statistically, yes. We're on more than a 10-year upswing, and generally speaking, every 10 years, you have some sort of downswing. I personally have a decent chunk of my portfolio in gold and silver to prepare for that. Does that mean it's going to happen? Of course not. I don't have a crystal ball, but if history repeats itself at all, it should be coming in the next couple of years.
Okay. I agree with that. I didn't know you were a gold bug, though. I've wanted to get into that too. So I have to ask you about that at a later date in another conversation. I want to learn more about gold myself.
I'm happy to discuss.
So I want to thank you for your time, Chad. I know that you're a husband, father, entrepreneur, realtor, stock day trader, and you're a landlord. What advice would you give the listeners of this podcast who also seek to add "and landlord" to their personal list of titles and descriptions?
You kind of touched on it earlier, is that you just have to kind of take the dive in. There's a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of meetings. It's very easy to learn how to be profitable as a landlord. So don't be scared of the unknown. Pump yourself as much information as possible. Take the dive knowing full well you're going to make mistakes. Maybe search for a thicker deal with a lot of room for error like I did. So when you make mistakes, it's not nearly as costly. And don't be results oriented. As soon as I had a partnership go bad and let go of that person in April, and by May I had another partnership which we've already made more money than the one I lost. And I think a lot of people would have said, oh, this one thing went bad, like everything's going to go bad. And you just can't think like that. You have to make an analysis and move forward and just jump in.
Thank you. I really like that advice. I appreciate that. I have one additional question. What books are you reading right now?
I'm actually reading a book on land trusts by Randy, I can't remember his last name, Hughes maybe. I'm just looking how to put my property in upstate New York and the one that I own in Florida, which you really didn't touch on, into a trust to make myself a little bit more insulated from liability and lawsuits.
You're right. I did not go back to your Florida property. Tell me about it, please.
So I bought that property in 2016, and this is what I knew about real estate. These are my thoughts. Real estate good, renting bad. Like, that was all I knew. This is also a two-structure property. It's a studio apartment in the back, about 600 square feet, and a two-bedroom house in the front, about 1,900 square feet. And my wife and I lived in the studio and rented out the two-bedroom house with a pool on Airbnb. We live about 5-minute drive to the beach and about a 10-minute drive to the Fort Lauderdale airport. Originally we were going to buy a house for about $350,000, live in it until we were ready for our next step. And I found this property for $520,000. And I said, oh, we can pay for our mortgage plus some by living in the studio. And it took a little while to talk her into it, but she eventually agreed. And the money that we made and saved over that 3-year period is about what I bought the property in New York for cash for. So that snowball of living in the 600 square foot apartment really is, that 70,000 we made is now going to make another 10,000 a year, on top of that.
So you sacrificed a little delayed gratification, and then it resulted in yet another property.
It did. And my friends thought I was nuts because for the money I was making, they just couldn't understand why I was living in this 600 square foot apartment, which was livable, but it's not like I moved from a two-bedroom apartment on Las Olas, which is a very nice district in Fort Lauderdale, into the studio apartment, and they just didn't understand. But I had a plan, and my plan is to be able to develop enough passive income to not have to work, not have to do my trading job.
How did you come to that realization? That's something that most people never even figure out, that you're better off doing your own thing and building residual passive income than being someone's employee. I commend you for figuring that out at such a young age.
Well, a lot of people learn from their parents, like how to act. I learned from my parents' mistakes, and they made pretty much every mistake financially they could in the book. They were very irresponsible, and my father unfortunately passed away, and he had a tremendous amount of stress on himself in the later part of his life, in his late 50s. So to my mom, because they had no money and they didn't have a retirement plan, and they didn't save and they didn't invest, and I didn't want to be like that. I decided I didn't want to be someone who had to work in their 50s. Like, that's the going rate. That's what everyone does. They save into the 401k, they work very hard, and then, they retire for a totally sweet life into their 50s and 60s, which there's nothing wrong with. I just decided that I didn't want that. I did not like that status quo that everyone seems to do. I wanted to do the things I love to do, and I thought that I could do those things from age 40 on, which is way earlier than most.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Well, Chad, you've been a great guest. I thank you. You're only the second interview I have done on the podcast, and I know that you and I will eventually be doing some deals together as well. We'll just have to get to that point. But I thank you so much for your time and for the information that you've provided to those who listen to the And Landlord podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, JT. It was a big pleasure.
Okay, that was my interview with Chad Castell, husband, father, stock day trader, realtor, and landlord. What did you think? Let me know. I'd appreciate the feedback. And also, if you are beyond your first deal in real estate investing, let me know. Let everyone know. Come on the show and talk about your experience, good, bad, or ugly. I want to hear about it. Everyone will benefit from learning from the experiences of others, especially others that are just starting out. Everyone can go on the Bigger Pockets podcast and listen to someone who has 200 units, but are you really going to learn from that person who has 200 units what you need to know in order to get your first unit? So go to andlandlord.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get in Touch if you'd like to be on the show. Or if you know someone who is an entrepreneur or has a landlord story or even a landlord horror story that might benefit others to hear, I'm interested. I want to hear it. I'd like to get those individuals on the show. And if you don't have any rental properties yet and you're looking to get started and become a landlord, but you think you can't, you think maybe your day job prevents you from doing it, look at Chad. He's a stock day trader, 5 days a week. His day is occupied, but yet he still became a landlord. So you can do it, and property management may be the thing that will help you do it. And like I've said before, if your rental property or if you're looking to get a rental property in the Raleigh-Durham area, Feel free to contact me, hire me and Blue Chariot Management to take care of your property management needs in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area of North Carolina. Thank you for listening to the And Landlord podcast with me, Jonathan Taylor Smith, by Blue Chariot Media, following a roadmap to financial freedom through residential rental real estate. You can find the podcast website and blog at andlandlord.com. The main company site is bluechariot.com. If you've received any value from this podcast, help me, please, to make it available to others, and make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing and posting your 5-star rating. Plus, share it on social media. I welcome your comments on the blog. And if you'd like to share your landlord horror story or have a comment or suggestion for the show, call 844-USA-BLUE and enter extension 263, which spells "and" on your keypad, as in "and landlord," and leave a message. It may be used on a coming show. Thank you. Be all that you are. And landlord. Nothing on the preceding show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The comments and opinions of any guest are their own. Information is not guaranteed. Any investment may have potential for both profit and loss. The host is speaking solely on behalf of Blue Chariot Media, LLC.